As an everyday wine consumer, what's the first thing we should know about how wine awards work?
Well, all that glitters is not gold when it comes to wine awards. They have good aspects to them and less so aspects. And I think what's good about wine awards is that they are shorthand. They can tell consumers who don't want to spend lots and lots of hours poring over tasting notes, horrors as a critic. I would think they grip onto every word, but they don't. So this is shorthand, just like a score is. So as a wine critic, when I evaluate a wine, I give it a score out of 100, 90, 89, whatever, just like you got on your math tests. Well, these awards are very similar to that. So there's usually a gold, silver, bronze. Sometimes there are honorable mentions. So one of the good things is that they are shorthand to consumers to say, this wine is probably a decent wine and did well in a recent competition.
Okay, and the competitions vary from sort of hyper-local, like we have Okanagan Wine Awards in southern BC, to national and international. How do we judge which awards are better than other awards?
Yes, that's true. It goes all the way from, your county fair pie competition up to, serious bake-offs at the national level. Well, there are two awards organizations that are kind of the Olympics of wine awards. One is in Bordeaux called Vinexpo, and they happen each year. The other is the International Wine and Spirits Competition, which happens in London. And our Canadian wines do very well in these competitions. Now, of course, there's one associated with the local festival this week. There are others organized by magazines and other local wine councils. They all have their place, but the downside of some of these shows is that it's kind of like kindergarten sometimes. Everyone walks away with an award just for participating. And there's not always just one gold in a category. Let's say we're dealing with full-bodied reds, or even more specifically, Cabernets. You can have multiple wines winning those awards. And so it's not a definitive answer for the consumer. So that's kind of the flip side of what I was talking about earlier. And so you have to regard these awards with sometimes a grain of salt.
We spoke to a local wine expert who suggested that a lot of these awards were marketing ploys by the wine industry to get people to buy more wine, obviously, which I suppose there's nothing wrong with that. How do we tell? Should we look at who's sponsoring the award? I mean, do wine magazines have a different motivation than a local festival, for example?
I'm not sure that their motivations would be different. I think all awards are marketing vehicles, both for the wineries and for the people who sponsor them, because it costs money to enter these awards. You are not sort of hand-picked like Cinderella, and scooped off the liquor store shelf by these organizations, whether it's a magazine or a festival or so on. The wineries have to enter their wines, so there's the cost of doing that because you have to provide multiple samples of the same wine, plus you have to pay entry fees. Often these competitions are moneymakers for the organizations. So there's that aspect. And also, we've got to step back. This is wine. It's a subjective experience. Trying to trap it in a number, as I do, or in an award, as these competitions do, is not an exact science. It's somebody's judgment, a subjective judgment at a moment in time. And, to me and to lots of us, wine is a lot more than a score or a badge or an award. So you have to kind of consider all of that.
You were talking earlier about wine ratings, and you'd see those cards on wine in the liquor store as well. It might say 90, or sometimes, if you're really lucky, 92. Would you put more stock into ratings or more stock into awards? I mean, if you had a gold medal wine from a well-known award next to a rating from a well-known magazine, which way would you lean?
I would go with the credibility of the source. So for years, the most famous wine critic in the United States was Robert Parker, because he popularized that 100-point system. Now we have lots of other reviewers, and with the proliferation of bloggers, there are lots of scores out there. So you have to have the same kind of tentativeness when you look at a score. Who's it coming from? So I think I would take the source. And, on my site at nataliemclean.com, I explain how I do those scores. So I think that's really important, too. Like, what does a 90 mean? And is it so much better than an 88. Tell me what you mean by these scores, and then look at the tasting notes. Because, I may have rated a Cabernet or a Pinot Noir from the Okanagan as 96, but if you don't like silky, medium-bodied wines, that Pinot Noir may not be your cup of tea, so to speak. You may want a more full-bodied Shiraz from Australia that I've rated 87. So you really have to, again, context matters.
You mentioned your own website, and there are lots of apps, mobile apps, and websites to help you sift through all of this. How has technology changed the accessibility of wine?
Oh, it's really come a long way. I think mobile apps are a natural for the wine category, because where do we make most of our wine decisions? It's not sitting at home in front of a big desktop computer. It's when we're in the liquor store or maybe at a restaurant looking at a wine list. And so that is why my team and I developed, apps for the iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, and so on, because when you're out there in the liquor store, a lot of people are nervous about asking a question and looking foolish, even though I find liquor store staff are very helpful and expert and not intimidating. Still, that's what the scores are there on the shelves for. That's what the awards are there on the bottle for, because people don't like to ask. They want to know. But apps are a natural play into that. So, for example, with our apps, you can scan the barcode, and up comes the tasting note, the score, the food matches, and all of that. And that's really, people are just looking for some reassurance.
Natalie, since we have you on the line, and before we let you go, very quickly, I wonder if you could recommend an Okanagan Red and an Okanagan White for us.
Oh, wow. You're narrowing me down too much, but I understand the time constraints. Okay, so Blue Mountain Pinot Noir, Painted Rock Cabernet, I know that's two, Jackson Trigg Shiraz, those are fabulous. On the white side, first off, I'm going to mention Sumac Ridge Tribute Bubbly sparkling wine is phenomenal. On the white side, let's see, an Inniskillen Riesling. I'm trying to think. There's so many Rieslings, Pinot Grigios, fabulous zesty whites, Mission Hill, See You Later Ranch. Some terrific wines. I wish, more of them would get distributed across the entire country.
There are people working on that as we speak.
It's a fabulous industry.
Natalie, thanks so much for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Chris. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Natalie McLean is a sommelier and a wine writer. You can see more on her website, nataliemclean.com.